Let's now explore the forearm and hand as we continue with location methods and soon measurements. For locating points on the forearm, it is important to note whether the arm is in a pronated or supinated position, since this can have a considerable effect on the relative location of some points. For example, in supination, the line connecting LI5 and LI11 runs along the lateral border of the forearm, while in pronation, it traverses the forearm. So first, we discuss about the styloid process of the radius. The styloid process forms a flat mound on the anterior and lateral aspect of the distal end of the radius. An oblique groove can be palpated at the transition from the process to the shaft of the radius. This is the location of lung 7 and lung 8 is located slightly more distally and anteriorly at the border of the process. Next, we have the styloid process of the ulna. The styloid process of the ulna is located at the distal end of the forearm, at the distal end of the ulna, forming a distinct prominence. With the elbow flexed and the forearm in a supinated position, a small groove becomes palpable by sliding the groove of the tendon of the extensor carpi ulnaris muscle. This is the location of SI6. Next, we have the anterior wrist joint space, or the most distal wrist crease. Chinese textbook on acupuncture are the most distal wrist crease as a reference for points around the wrist joint. However, since the location of the crease can vary, the space between the proximal row of the carpals and the ulnar radius should be used instead. By gently moving the wrist joint, the space can be clearly felt. In the proximal row of the carpal bones, the prominent pisiform bone marks the ulnar end, its proximal border serving as a bony landmark for locating the anterior wrist joint space, where heart 7 and pericardium 7 and lung 9 are located. Next, we have the pisiform bone and tendon of the flexor carpi ulnaris muscle. The pisiform bone is an important reference point on the ulnar aspect of the wrist joint. Here, the insertion of the tendon of the flexor carpi ulnaris muscle marks the location of several points of the heart channel, namely heart 7 and heart 4 are lined up on the radial aspect of the tendon. Next, we have the dorsal wrist joint space, or the dorsal wrist crease. For the location of points on the dorsal aspect of the hand and forearm, many Chinese textbooks quote the dorsal wrist crease for anatomical reference. Since this crease may vary in location, the space between the proximal row of the carpal bones and the radius or ulna should be used instead. This space can be easily palpated by gently moving the wrist joint. Here we can find triple burner 4, extra point EXUE3, and those points. Triple burner 4 and EXUE3. Okay. Next, we have the pisiform bone in the ulnar border of the hand. On the ulnar border of the hand, distal to the wrist joint space, the pisiform bone is again a good landmark for orientation. It can be felt as a distinct prominence between the joint space and the head of the fifth metacarpal bone, separating SI4 at the distal end and SI5 at the proximal end. Next, we have the anatomical snuff box. With the thumb abducted, the anatomical snuff box forms a depression at the radial aspect of the wrist joint space, which opens towards the body when the hand is held in a horizontal position. It is bordered by the tendons of the extensor pollicis longus and the brevis muscles. LI5 is located in the snuff box.